as you can
No,
imagine, my Packer shit is fucking dense. So
well, yeah, I expect that, man.
yeah, but
Because
hopefully,
yeah, I don't know.
hopefully it's good dense and not just
Good,
fucking
good dents.
stupid dense. But we'll
A
see.
healthy BM. I'm with you. All right.
I took a lease out on your heart. I took a lease out on your heart. Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun?
Welcome back, everybody. We are Ref Draft Research. You are the audience, and together we are on a quest for Dynasty Domination. How's it going over there, Daniel?
Oh, living it, man. Just ready for football.
Ooh,
Gonna probably scope out some preseason stuff here in the next few days to get ready to
yeah.
figure out, man, what those early season waiver wires are going to be looking like. Make all the mistakes, drop all the future Hall of Famers before the season starts. Puka Nakoa talking to you. And
Oh
yeah,
no.
what about you, man? I'm doing good.
I'm feeling good. Same. I'm getting excited for football. Fantasy chats are already heating up, and then you
Oh,
got preseason on tonight. We can go watch highlights after we record this, if
oh
we
yeah.
want. That's it's exciting time to be alive as a
Yeah,
football
yeah,
fan.
absolutely it is.
Eh,
Christian, they've done something this offseason. They've managed to keep the interest high.
Yeah.
If it's not quarterback battles for,
hmm
Las Vegas teams or Minnesota teams, it's contract not news and they're still doing it. Like this is way too late for contract conversation.
Yeah.
So
Holy
they got
shit.
us hook, line, and sinker, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Brandon Ayuk, CD Lamb in the news right now. Oh my goodness. It's
What's next?
we're
Yeah.
here. We're here. It's gonna be a good time. Unless you're a CD Lamb roster holder. It's not looking great right this second. But that's not who we're here to talk about.
Not
We are here
today.
to talk about the NFC North, as you can tell from the Jordan Love jersey I'm rocking. From thank you to my sister for that. It was a gift, birthday present, so I figured I'd debut it.
Nice, dude.
So here it is. Excited about that. And obviously, we saved the NFC North for last because we used to have three people in this podcast, and one of them, being AJ, was a huge Vikings fan. So it made sense to save it for last. So, in honor of that, let's kick things off with the Minnesota Vikings, shall we? So, I pretty exciting. The Vikings take JJ McCarthy in the first round of the draft, a guy who I like. Not, I guess I don't love it as a Packers fan with the Vikings, but I do think the Vikings picked a good player. Um, but I do think they're going to slow play it with JJ. I think Sam Darnold's going to start, and they are going to kind of let him have a few, maybe total the bye week, maybe a little after that or whatever, and just kind of see what they have and let McCarthy kind of chill a bit. Because I think Kevin O'Connell can really help both these quarterbacks succeed. And I think JJ kind of earning or like developing on the bench with O'Connell there makes a lot of sense, at least to me. So that's where I see this QB room going. I don't think it's going to be amazing. We'll see where JJ's at. But in terms of like Sam Darnold, I'm not buying into some like crazy renaissance out of Sam Darnold. I mean, I do think he could play better with Kevin O'Connell, but I don't think he's going to be like some tremendous superstar all of a sudden. But who knows? Moving on from the QB room, we're looking at Justin Jefferson hopefully being healthy finally, or not finally, but like fully this season. Um, he had 100 targets and 1,000 yards in 9 games anyway. So if if you have him, you're gonna start him regardless. Honestly, maybe even if he's hurt sometimes, just because he's just that crazy. He might get 200 targets this upcoming season, after getting a just ridiculously massive deal in the offseason, becoming the highest paid non-quarterback ever, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just an insane amount of money for him, which I mean, well deserved. That's where the market's going. So, um, Jefferson might get some up and down play this season, so that could be a little frustrating as Jefferson owners and for Jefferson himself. But let's not ignore the fact that Kirk Cousins was pretty up and down. Like he was solid up for a lot of the time and put up really good numbers, but also he had streakiness to him. So it's not like Justin Jefferson wasn't already kind of dealing with that. Like it might be enhanced a bit, but he's going to dominate regardless. So like it's hard to talk about Justin Jefferson because it's like, yeah, he's probably going to score you a billion points. What do you want me to say? So moving on from him, we look at the wide receiver 2 and 3 spot, right? I don't, me personally, I don't think the three matters too terribly much because of TJ Hawkinson being there. I mean, we saw TJ Hawkinson lead the team in targets last season with 127, and that was without Justin Jefferson there. So if you look at that, it's obviously going to be Jefferson 1, and I genuinely feel like it's going to be Hawkinson again at 2 next season, and then Addison. So then we're talking about the fourth guy, not really the third guy. So I don't think it's going to be hugely effective, but O'Connell has shown the ability to like make a third guy like a KJ Osborne somewhat viable on random like bye weeks or whatever, or injury weeks that you need to throw somebody in. He can kind of get it done, or at least not be terrible sometimes. Um, so you look at guys like Brandon Powell's getting a lot of pop, and then Jalen Naylor is also doing pretty well. Like it seems like, I mean, I could be misinformed on that one. I kind of forget now.
No,
Now
he's
that
doing
I'm
well.
talking
I
about.
just it just cracks
Okay.
me up
Oh,
when
gotcha.
those kind of names
Start
keep
popping up.
relevance
Oh
like three,
yeah.
4 years down the road, and you're like, oh,
Yeah. You're
there's
like,
someone else
well,
taking that
yeah.
hype spot by now.
I was surprised to not recognize many of the names really on the Vikings wide receiver core. I again, I don't think it matters too much, but it does seem like Naylor was the guy that they want to start, so that's who I would look at, but it's a deep stash anyway. So looking at Addison and kind of with the Hawkinson stuff in sight as well. I think Addison's likely to get like between 80 and 110 targets. I know that's a pretty big gap, but they're going to throw a lot. So, but I just think he's going to be the third fiddle there to Hawkinson and Jefferson. So I think it's going to be like in the low hundreds potentially because he did get over 100 last year. But again, that was with Jefferson hurt, but Jefferson also got 100. So you had three guys with 100 last year. So
Hmm.
it's not hard to imagine that you would get that again. But I could also see him dipping with a healthy Jefferson all year, a rookie quarterback, so potentially more running game, and then the emergence of Hawkinson being like the actual two there. Um, Also on Addison, I think he'll be useful. Obviously, I'm saying he can get 80 to 110 targets. Like that's useful, highly useful. But I don't think he scores 10 touchdowns again. I just don't see it, not with the Vikings again. I'm going to talk about the rushing game in a little bit, but presumably that's going to be better than it was because it was pretty atrocious last year. And then you bring in Jefferson, who's obviously going to catch more touchdowns than the five he had. Um, or I think it was five. And then Hawkinson's going to be there in the red zone. So I just don't think Addison is in line for another 10 touchdown season. So that kind of limits his viability in terms of like moving forward from where he was. He's like more likely, I think, to scale back from where he finished last year in terms of fantasy, but we'll see. Um Hawkinson starting the entire season, I genuinely think puts him in the conversation for the tight end one. Like I'd say probably more likely the tight end 3, like in that top 3 range. But like he's in that. Like it wouldn't surprise me if they pepper him with 140 targets or something crazy. 127, even again would be nuts. And he is more efficient and whatever. I mean, he's coming off the injury, but the reports are that he's like not even ruled out week 1 right now, and he's made massive progress that they were kind of not expecting. So there's a chance that even if he's not there week 1, that he's there from like week 2 or 3 on, which would give him a pretty decent season. Um, but regardless, whenever he is healthy and on the field, I just think they're gonna just throw it to him constantly. So I really like Hawkinson this year in terms of like redraft or obviously dynasty if you can get your hands on him or already have him.
Yeah,
And then I've mentioned it a few times looking at the rushing game. Aaron Jones is super interesting addition. I hate it, obviously. It hurts my heart. Honestly, it might be worse than Rodgers as well. I think Adams and Jones were worse than Rodgers. Um, But anyway, that's besides the point. They just need some semblance of a rushing game because if you looked in 2023, the Vikings ranked 28th in attempts, 29th in yards, and 30th in touchdowns. So basically just nothing out of
Yeah.
the rushing game, which I think most of these like offensive minded coaches do want obviously balance in their offense to make it work correctly. O'Connell does seem to throw a little bit more than some of these other guys like a LaFleur or Shanahan or stuff like that, but he still rushes the ball and he needs that rushing game. The play action game is something that Kirk Cousins did so well, and presumably they're going to want it for Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy. Um, so Jones, obviously returning from injury, looked awesome at the end of last year. From weeks 15 to 20, so including playoffs here, Jones had 584 yards and three scores. That's all in 5 games. Now, the three scores is a little misleading because it was all in one game against the Cowboys. But he obviously adds some juice to this rushing attack that they sorely needed. And I think he can have like a nice RB2 season. I think Ty Chandler is like an interesting deep stab with Jones' injury history. And then just like he's always had a number two that kind of would take a lot of the pressure off of him sometimes. So I think they're going to want to implement that as well. But there is a problem. I don't really see a ton of passes coming their way, which hurts their upside quite a bit, especially Jones, obviously. He always had some nice receiving work in Green Bay. And so only 13% of the offense's targets went to running backs last season, and it was 11% the year before. So that you almost see like a 2% increase because of the fact that Justin Jefferson was down. And so, like, if we're hanging around the low teens and how many targets percentage wise these running backs are going to get, I don't really see that helping him a lot. Aaron Jones, that is. And he should help their rushing games, but one of his issues last season was scoring, which so was the Vikings. I mean, Jones only had 3 touchdowns on the ground last season, and that's not including the playoff game. So that was 3 throughout the entire season. I know he missed a bunch of weeks, but it's worth keeping an eye on the fact that, like, okay, we're plugging this guy in who also didn't score a lot of touchdowns and we didn't score a lot of touchdowns. So it just, but Aaron Jones obviously throughout the years has proven that he's a red zone weapon and can score a lot. So it's just like one of those is he falling off type things, which it didn't seem like it the way you looked at the end of last year. Touchdowns can be fluky, as we know, in terms of like getting them a lot. So I don't think he's out. I think he's going to be good, but I just, that's a little nugget to at least kind of pay attention to. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have on the Vikings there. So what are you feeling on them?
It's a mystery to me because what they've had has been so consistent with
Uh-huh.
Kirk, and there was Diggs, and then there's Jefferson, and it's kind of like a new identity, and I think that we want to forecast like more of the same, but I think that's ultimately a pretty massive mystery. I know you bring up Hawkinson and his
Hmm.
target share, and that was pretty impressive. And seeing that continue probably makes sense for the quarterbacks we have in the room, but they were one of only 3 teams that supported 3 players with 90 plus targets.
Hmm.
And so trying to forecast that as consistent after Kirk Cousins is it's tough for me to do
That's fair.
personally. I'm kind of scared. Yeah, Addison might be dropping way off a cliff. He had his best games were week 5, 7, 8, and 15, and only 15 was with JJ. So that
Hmm.
might take a little bit of his thunder. And as we all know, JJ only had 2 full weeks last year that were under 24 fantasy points. So he's obviously the man with the plan. So just seeing how this all shakes out with the new players under center, it's like I feel like I just don't speculate as much as I used to. uh and this one feels like, damn, we just got to wait and find out. I know Vikings people are pretty into the potential Darnold to
Hmm.
get pretty aggressive, so um I'm with that. I hope they do their thing and I hope it all works out. But I'm gonna be on the sidelines just kind of waiting to find out. So
Hmm.
that's where I'm at with it. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean, if you talk about change, you talk about, this division here, you've got to be talking about another team besides the Detroit Lions because there's there's no change.
Mm-mm.
We have no change here, and the big point of no change for the Detroit Lions is Ben Johnson, baby. I mean, like,
Hmm.
what are we doing here? This guy's like he's like edging, really teasing the NFL with this, like, am I going to be a head coach? Am I going to come back thing? And I don't know. It's kind of crazy. I think, I know you don't want to hear this, but we got Lions Chiefs Super Bowl coming up. It's a
Mm.
rematch of the week one
Okay.
opening game from 2023, and we'll see how it goes. And then, following that Super Bowl, hopefully Chiefs get it done.
Boo.
But no matter what happens, it will be nice to see Ben Johnson finally get a head coaching job, with the Dallas Cowboys, and then we can all
Oh
move on
goodness.
from a lot of things.
Damn.
Uh,
Crystal ball out tonight, huh?
that's true. Yeah, yeah. When you get this deep, you see the future.
Gotcha.
Uh, so
Damn. I guess
anyway,
I got to get deeper then.
man, I mean, we're deep. We're in it together. It's just a matter of how risky you want to be with the things you say on a recorded podcast, and
That's
I have
fair.
no shame, so I'm all in on it. But this is what it is. The Lions, and I'm giving credit mostly to Ben Johnson. This guy's awesome. But they were ninth in pass attempts, second in passing yards, seventh in rush attempts, and fifth in rushing yards, fifth in scoring, and they won 12 games. So you mentioned like being a balanced team as far as the run and the pass go. They really nailed that. They got it down pretty well. And it's clear to see why, when you got Jameer Gibbs and you got David Montgomery, like, you can't really ask for too much more when it comes to a 1-2 punch. Obviously, Gibbs just kind of blew up as a rookie. He had 5.19 average, and the usage went up as the year went on. After missing weeks 5 and 6, he went up to 92 yards per game on the average, whereas before missing those 2 weeks, he was only at 62 yards per game. So if he continues to step up, I mean, the potential is extreme. A couple of things with him is he's going to have to get his receiving touchdown numbers up. He only had
Yeah.
one,
Hmm.
which, you're fighting Sam Laporta and that never forgotten competition between the tight end and the running back room when it comes to
Red zone.
the targets. And then, like, breaking down the red zone targets for this team, it's abysmal, man. Like, Gibbs had 7, and yeah, Demont didn't have any. So yeah, I don't know. It gets pretty obviously taken up by St. Brown, who had 23, and then Laporte had 15. So it's a pretty big deal. Josh Reynolds is gone, so maybe
Hmm.
that will be funneled to the running back room, but I don't know. I kind of doubt it. Um, but yeah, when you're looking at Gibbs and you're thinking about, hey, he's top 10 in running back targets, he should probably have more than one receiving touchdown, but really 6 of the top 10 running back targeted guys didn't score more than one receiving touchdown. So that kind of weirded me out. But man, hell of a rookie year,
Yeah.
182 touches, 945 yards, and then 10 touchdowns. It's like the golden number on this team. Everyone had double digit touchdowns. So you got him coming in with Demont. Obviously, he was out touching him quite a bit. He had 219 touches, over 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns. That was pretty incredible. He out touched Gibbs by 3.5 carries per game.
Damn.
And the red zone usage on the ground was pretty heavy to Demont. It was 50 to 37 for Gibbs, but inside the 5, it was 17 to 8, so over twice as many touches going to Demont. So we pretty much see what we're doing here.
Mhm.
I hate to look at the numbers like this because as electric as Gibbs was and the potential he has, I hate to see that really, really restricted red zone usage and the success this team had, and the way it's built and the consistency and the continuity it has from last year. It's hard to really picture too much of that changing. Is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
So. Gibbs is awesome. He was top 10 RB. He was the 10 RB. So we'll let him have that. Goff, man, I mean, I'm excited about him back-to-back years in the top 10, over 4,400 yards. He's right at about 30 touchdowns his past two seasons. And you mentioned Kirk Cousins being streaky. Like Jared Goff has wild variance in his week-to-week production.
Hmm.
He had 8 games last year with 0 or 1 passing touchdown.
Damn.
And yeah, 6 of those 8 games were QB 28 or like QB 20 or worse. So if you look at, 6 games being worse than QB 20, not really throwing the touchdowns, but then still ending up as a QB 7, like he's got some nice boom games.
Yeah.
Um, and it really shows. I mean, like I said, 4 players on this team with double-digit touchdowns. It's just a lot of that's coming through the air with the Monra and Laporta. So Goff is getting his, and him and Ben Johnson obviously have a good thing going. Um, but yeah, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown and the pass catchers on this team, pretty much borderline unstoppable.
Yeah.
Yeah, St. Brown, wide receiver 3 last year. Only CD Lamb and Tyreek had more receiving yards, and there's nothing on this team that is going to shake that, in my opinion. Josh Reynolds, like I mentioned, is gone 64 targets. So maybe St. Brown has a little bit of a bump. He had 164 targets last year, caught 120 of them. And
Jeez.
that's kind of his thing. He has a career average over 75% catch rate.
Hmm.
That's top 5 for guys over 50 targets. A bunch of his numbers are top 5 right in there, like yards per route run. He was 6 with 2.63. And I don't know. His yak was number 1 in the whole league for wide
Jesus.
receivers, but his A dot is 8 yards, which is extremely low for these guys that are heavily targeted. Only Rasheed Rice was a lower A dot for anyone over 50 targets. So
Damn.
he's just getting it done after the catch, and he's extremely reliable. And yeah, he's not nothing stopping on that. So um, I don't know what you want to say about St. Brown. We were wrong, coming
Yeah.
out of USC.
Oh, big time.
All he did was catch everything, and like that's all he's still doing.
Yeah.
And so you put volume behind that
Hmm.
and just dialed in with Goff, and it's lights out. So yeah, Jameson Williams, he's had some deep game flashes, but nothing is consistent enough, including
Yeah.
his health, for me to get behind him. But it does feel like this team could have easily added to the wide receiver room in the draft or free agency or done something, and they didn't. So there must be a high level of faith in Williams.
Yeah.
So if he does get on the field and stay on the field, I think Goff can put him to work. Yeah, 64 targets. Josh Reynolds, like it's got to go somewhere because they didn't really add anybody.
Yeah.
You still got Donovan Peoples-Jones and Khalif Raymond, so whatever those guys want to do. But I'm not really, they're not rosterable, right? As far
Yeah.
as fantasy goes. So Williams is the guy to have a little bit of hype for something new coming out here. But then you got Laporta, and I mean, the dude is him, right? Like he's a tight end 1. And if you look at like the stats and everything, there's nothing like jumping off the screen
Yeah.
outside of having 10 touchdowns, which led tight ends, and then having, a really good contested catch rate and good numbers there. There's room for him to improve in all kinds of categories. There's no like fluky stats that elevated him
Yeah.
over the competition that he can't strive to advance on, except for like 10 touchdowns. Like if he can do that every year, he's going to be a top 3 guy year in and year out.
Yeah.
But as far as usage, he had 120 targets, 86 catches, and just under 900 yards. And I could see a 10 to 15% increase on some of
Mhm.
those stats. So that's basically I mean, that's basically what I'm looking at. More of the same. We got four players over 10 touchdowns or 10 touchdowns or more. It's just going to keep getting funneled through those guys. So I'm pumped to see how it goes. This is a lot of juice, man. That was cool to play the Rams and everything happened, and they were so
Yeah.
close to silencing the Niners. And let's see, let's run it back or whatever they do.
Yeah, it should be good. I mean, I can't see why they're not going to compete for the NFC Championship game again, like
Right.
or even farther. Jared Goff, obviously super underrated still, even though he's been nothing but consistent ever since getting to Detroit in terms of fantasy quarterback. Well, I mean, like maybe not consistent as you pointed out in fantasy, but like
Mm-mm. No, but the
overall,
production has been, yeah.
yeah, overall the production has been solid. I'm super in on Gibbs. I think they're gonna kind of let him explode and flip that distribution between him and David Montgomery. We'll see. I see where your concern is in the red zone. He definitely needs to be getting more targets in that area if he's gonna really kind of take advantage of his skill set. And but we'll see. Amon Ra St. Brown is going to be a beast again. Probably top five wide receiver. I don't see why not. Like he's going to get a million targets and he's going to catch most of them. That's like you said, that's just what he does. And I'm also with you. I'm not really in on the Jamison Williams resurgence, but like you're saying, there are targets to go around. They have to go somewhere. So I do think he's going to get more opportunities. The camp hype on him this offseason has been super real and it we'll see. Maybe it just the first year was injury, and then he's kind of finally having a full year, and he just taking a slow time to get started. But we'll see. And again, just like you said, I don't really care about the wide receiver three here. Not in terms of fantasy. And Sam Laporta, I mean, like I said earlier, touchdowns are fluky. So if he loses some of those, like you're gonna maybe be hurting. But I think he's in the conversation for the top three tight ends as well. Uh, so like you're good. I don't yeah, like there's not a lot to talk about with the Lions because they didn't change much because they didn't have to. Their offense was cooking. So just let it go.
Roasted.
So moving on to the Green Bay Packers. So obviously this is my favorite team, and so
Yeah.
hopefully I don't overload you guys, but here we go. Freshly paid Jordan Love was playing super lights out at the end of the season, as we all kind of saw throughout the playoffs for the most part. Obviously, the San Francisco game did not end great for him, but I kind of chalk that up as like young mistakes more than like that's who he is. I do think he's going to be a little more high risk than say a Rodgers. But I think it'll be fine. From weeks 11 to 18, Love was PFF's highest graded quarterback, which is just pretty nuts from the way he started the season. Um, and he's been able to show this ability to throw to anybody on the field. There isn't a guy that he relies on all the time. Like you could argue maybe Dobbs, but it's it's crazy the way the Matt LaFleur offense is working with Love, and I'm fully invested. I'm expecting big things out of him. You try to temper expectations, but I really do. I'm at this point, I'm all in. Let's go. I'm expecting him to kind of take that next step. The camp hype on Love has been extremely high as well. All the receivers are talking about that he's already taken steps from where he was at the end of last year. So obviously it's camp, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm expecting that out of him now. So the biggest question that most people have for the Packers in terms of fantasy is who is the Packers wide receiver one? And it's a super difficult question to answer. They have four guys who have an argument for the title. You got Romeo Dobbs, you got Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks. And they all have different arguments, which is what makes this kind of so difficult because they all do something different. And like Romeo Dobbs, uh, camp hype is through the roof right now. Jordan Love
Give it
calls him
to
one of the
me.
best receivers in the NFL. Like, and
Absolutely.
they're best friends or something, maybe. Like, but there's so much buzz all over Dobbs right now. Love like I said, is hyping him to the moon. He was the most targeted wide receiver out of anybody last season. He has the most experience with Love when you give the fact that he was drafted earlier than Wicks and Reed, spent time on the practice, like early practice with Love while Rodgers was there, and then Christian Watson has missed way more time than Romeo Dobbs. So out of anybody in Green Bay, he's caught more passes from Jordan Love than anybody else. So there's that clear connection. Um, then you get into Christian Watson, who has this clear explosive ability. He's only started 20 games and he has 12 touchdowns, which is a pretty remarkable rate to score touchdowns at. I mean, it's not like insane rate or anything. It's not a touchdown a game, but that's still pretty dope. And then you look at Watson and these kind of other these like more analytical stats. He's his first read percentage when he was healthy was 25% of the time. He was the first read on the route, which led the Packers. So I just think the Packers really want Christian Watson to be a factor, and health is really the only thing that's forced them not to. And then you look at Jaden Reed, who has the versatility and consistency going for him. He had 123 passer rating when targeted last season, which led the Packers. He had a 71% catch rate, which led the Packers. He also added over 100 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. I don't think there's going to be enough work for him to ever be like Debo or something crazy like that, where he has like enough rushing ability to really kind of assert him into this different level of wide receiver for fantasy. But I do think there are going to be weeks where Jaden Reed's rushing ability does swing a week for you. Like, because he does it. He does it enough and they want him to do it. You presumably that's going to go up. Like just with how this roster is going now that they trust all these guys and get one more year together and kind of working on this. And then you have Dontavian Wicks, who basically just has that sauce factor, man. Like he just looks so good, looks so clean, is almost it seems like he's always open, rips off chunks of yards out of nowhere, 14.9 yards per reception, which led the Packers. It just seems like he's just a different type of receiver that they kind of need in terms of like that X guy that can get open constantly. Um, so you have these four guys, and it's tough. If I have to like sit down and actually decide how I want this room, or not how I want it to, but how I expect this room to go, I genuinely think Jaden Reed and Christian Watson have their roles pretty much solidified. And I think Christian Watson is going to be a bigger factor than a lot of people are expecting if he stays healthy. Now, that's a huge if. Obviously, he's already hurt again in camp. Luckily, it's his shoulder and not his hamstrings. So, I mean, they kind of just are playing it safe with him.
Huh.
We'll see. That's a conversation that we have to have. But I think those two guys have the role solidified, which leaves Dobbs and Wicks, who kind of occupy a similar role within my opinion, as far as like just athleticism. I think Wicks is like more talented in that area. So there's potential for multiple wide receivers here to be effective and have a large amount of targets, but that well's not bottomless. So somebody is going to get left out to dry here. And in my opinion, it's going to be either Wicks or Dobbs. Now, it's tough to say. I'm honestly, I would have probably told you Wicks before we did this, but the amount of absurd hype around Romeo Dobbs has genuinely shifted me. And again, it's camp, so maybe we're not supposed to look into that stuff, but like it's absurd the way they're talking about this kid. So I'm gonna lead Dobbs takes it more this year, and Wicks kind of does become that fourth guy on the depth chart. Um, because, like I said, there's not enough for these four guys to really be that effective. LaFleur offenses are known for being balanced. He's ranked in the middle for rushing and passing attempts basically every single year he's been a head coach. I think his highest attempts year was 12th for rushing in like 2020 or something crazy like that. So with that being said, there's such a finite number of targets to spread around, and then we haven't even talked about the running back or the tight end room. So I just think Reed and Watson are going to have more plays in the playbook that are designed for them than Wicks or Dobbs, which makes their ceiling a little bit higher. Now, obviously, if Watson gets hurt, then that goes out the window, and now you have Dobbs, Wicks, and Reed, which is still a great three set, I think. And so then we're talking about definitely guys that you should. I mean, you all these guys should be rostered, obviously, but like definitely guys you can kind of rely on. Um, so I brought up the tight end room. Kraft and Musgrave both looked good when they were on the field last season. Um, they both were like hurt, and then they didn't really get to put like, especially Musgrave didn't really get to play with Jordan Love when he was heating up, and then Kraft did, but then Kraft also got hurt, so he's missed all the offseason, or not all the offseason, but a little bit of offseason. So he's back now, and Matt LaFleur's talking him up. And that tight end room is super interesting because they combined for like almost, oh, I must have not written it down here. So it was like they combined for like 80 something targets, which would have been, oh, sorry, no, I did 86 targets right here, which would have been the most for a tight end ever in a LaFleur offense. Now, obviously, they're probably not gonna eat each other that bad that they get all the targets to themselves, but there is a clear spot here that they want to target the tight end more. And I still think that it's Musgrave is who they want to feature, but Kraft is just such an all-around complete guy that it's going to be hard to really ignore him. Musgrave has the size and the speed factor to be an absolute matchup nightmare, and I think that's why they want him out there. But with the way Kraft played, they're both going to be viable. So it's going to be interesting how this room shakes out. I do lean towards Musgrave as being the guy that they really want to be their leading tight end in terms of receiving, and then Kraft can be the do it all and blocking type. Um, so I do think the tight end room, if one of them ends up starting predominantly of the other, I think finally has like top eight potential in the LaFleur system, which you don't really see. So I'm kind of excited again, and I was excited last year. Uh, when we got Musgrave, and obviously the injuries kind of derailed his season, and then Kraft came in and played well. So I'm really excited again and hope I don't get burned. But I do think the Packers tight end is going to be a factor this year. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Matt LaFleur loves balance. So, we're going to run the ball. They tried to get younger with Josh Jacobs. And I really do think he's in line for 200 to 250 carries if Aaron Jones' healthy seasons are anything to go by. And I do think they see Jacobs as more of a like tote the rock, like kind of carry the load type of guy than they would have in Aaron Jones. And I also think this is almost certainly the best offensive line that Jacobs is ever going to has ever played behind. So I do think Josh Jacobs is going to be a factor and be like an RB2 this season. And or maybe even an RB1. I could genuinely actually see Josh Jacobs being an RB1 with the amount of carries he's going to get, and then I do think he's going to be a factor in the passing game. Jordan Love has already talked about the fact that Jacobs has not caught a single touchdown in his career, so I almost want to
Hmm.
like do a parlay on that for week one, just them implementing him getting a passing touchdown in week one. Um, so I think Jacobs has a sneaky chance to be like really good for some people and really kind of steal some stuff. It depends on if like the guy we saw last year was just because he was on a bad Raiders team or if he was starting to age out. Regardless, the RB2 in Green Bay is always a factor with the RB2 at least getting 100 carries every year that Matt LaFleur is coached. And then obviously with Aaron Jones and his health, sometimes they got more. Marshawn Lloyd's been super explosive ever since he finally got to camp. He was dealing with some stuff before, and he's looked awesome. And I'm really, really excited about his potential. And I do think that he may be like not super factor, but AJ Dillon had a few weeks here and there where he was worth some value. And I could see Marshawn Lloyd putting up just basically being on the field a little more than maybe some people expected.
Yeah, that'd be okay. I'm just, man, there's like, I, yeah. I've tripped around this roster so much, just because there's a lot of, I mean, it's a high volume. I mean, it's incredible, what they've managed to do. Especially the scoring's been pretty impressive. But geez, there's so many guys. I'm
Hmm.
like if when you have too many B pluses, and I feel like you're looking for an A plus,
Hmm.
this team just scares me as far as the fantasy
Hmm.
uh, roster goes
Oh,
because
big time.
I mean you Dylan and Lloyd and Jacobs, and it's like
Hmm.
okay, well, like you could easily run all those guys and none of them hit 100 yards, or all of them get a score in a
Hmm.
game. And the wide receiver room, we've already seen that,
Hmm.
and it's just a continuation with that group. And the tight end room, I mean, I know there's potential, but who are they taking that work from when it's like we're talking like 10 solid skill position players on this
Hmm.
roster.
Yeah.
It's it's gonna be a wait and find out for me.
Yeah, I really think the Packers are gonna be a extremely good offense, but like for fantasy, I don't think there's a guy who has like top five upside or maybe even top 10 upside. Like I
Yeah,
just think they're gonna spread it so much. And because like you're saying, there's so many guys, and that's awesome when you're Jordan Love. Well, I mean that actually scratch that. Jordan Love has top five potential. Absolutely, he does with the amount of weapons he has and the good offensive line. If he can just sit back there and dart to whoever and just rack up touchdowns, then he has top five potential. But out of the skill position group, I don't really see anybody being that high because of that very factor. Like I think they're going to pick guys different weeks who match up better or whatever, and it's going to be tough for anybody to really kind of be that consistent. Now, it is worth noting that again, Romeo Dobbs is the guy getting all the camp hype about having a monster season. So we will
bring
see
it.
how it goes.
Yeah, that's what I would say if I was trying to shop a wide receiver too. Good work, Green Bay. When you've got a year of plenty, you might as well spread the wealth and invest in the future, huh? Good for them. Well, I mean, this whole division, I mean, imagine if Kirk Cousins was still with the Vikings, it'd
Oh
be
yeah.
insanity,
Hmm.
pure insanity. Because I mean, getting into the Bears now, dude. And there's a lot to be said about the Bears. They drafted Caleb Williams. I mean, what up? Big news here. But I think that there's not a lot to say about him at this point that can't be summed up by going through the rest of this team. So I'm going to skip him. It is what it is. Caleb Williams, we know if he can deliver as a rookie, it's going to be great. Yeah, he's got top 10 potential with the setup he's walking into. It's hilarious. Justin Fields, I'm sure the apologies got
Yeah, poor
lost in the
guy.
mail, but
Yeah.
you'd be all right. You'd be all right. Tomlin's got your back. But yeah, this is the coach's corner. Like we talked about doing a coach's episode and we didn't do it. I secretly did it on this episode. So I
There we
talked
go.
a lot
We got
about
it
Ben
in.
Johnson, the
In the
OC,
AJ
and
episode, even.
I know, man. What are you gonna do? Brush it off, I guess. This could have been, yeah, the All-Star Vikings and Coaches Corner. This is made for the
That would have been him.
Arthur Jarther. Oh well, single tier. He'll be all right. He'll listen, maybe. But Shane Waldron, dude. He's a new OC. Last 3 years, he's been with Seattle as the OC. And yeah, those 3 years at Seattle, it was a bottom 10 rush group.
Hmm.
Uh and yeah, they were passing the ball like crazy. And last year they were second lowest in rush attempts. And now he's in Chicago and they were second highest in rush attempts. And bottom five in pass attempts. So I think that we don't really have any continuation of the Bears, from last year. And that's great. I think that's probably best case scenario. Matt Eberflus going to do defensive things or whatever, and Shane Waldron's going to walk in to a room with Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen after walking out of a room that was, he had Lockett, DK, and JSN. Like it's on. It's pretty seamless as far
Yeah.
as going from one wide receiver room to another if you're used to having a wealth of assets. So yeah, I believe that we are going to see some lower rushing numbers coming out of this group right now. And that just slots right in, like I was saying with Caleb, and just a high quality pass attack, high volume pass attack. And it's on. It's 100% on. We have DeAndre Swift being added to
Yep.
the running back room. And with this being said, low rushing attempts in Seattle and whatnot, I will give Shane Waldron some credit for kind of favoring a single running back approach. For all of us big time Zach Charbonnet truthers, it wasn't cool to watch Kenneth Walker just be the featured guy. But I think when it comes to this backfield, Swift is probably going to be happy. We're all going to be happy to see that kind of mentality going forward. But it blows my mind with Swift that he has had four fantasy seasons within 20-point spread, like hovering around the
Huh.
200 mark. It's really a tight grouping, considering the injuries and
Yeah.
just the different situations he's been in. Um, Pretty impressive. But the part that really gets me is how he maintained that output when he went to Philadelphia, and he only had 3 games with over 4 targets. And just to put that in context, his first 3 years in the league, he had no more than 3 games under 4 targets in
Hmm.
any given season. So it's a huge workload shift
Yeah.
from the passing game to the running game. So I don't know. I thought it was cool. He had more versatility than I was really giving him credit for.
Hmm.
So I was happy to see that. Let's see. I think that you got to give some credit to Philadelphia, right? I mean, that's one of the probably best O lines in the
Yeah.
league last year. And then you got a top three rushing quarterback, taking some of the heat off of him. And then obviously Swift had the healthiest season he's had as a pro. So yeah, bring it on, man. Um, but the past 2 years, Justin Fields led the Bears in rushing yards,
Hmm.
and there's no identity to the running back room. They've had pretty much just some gross stuff ever since Demont was no longer in. We had 4 rushers between 80 and 135 carries. So
Damn.
this is just gross. We need to clean it up. We need to channel it through one player, and I think that Swift has to be that player. I think he's got a chance to regain some of that rushing role that he didn't have with the Eagles last year. So it's on. I mean, the career highs in rushing attempts with 229 for him last year. It was 1,000 yards on the ground, only 5 touchdowns. You could see that going up, especially, I mean, there's so much rush work available to him with the Bears, and he's not getting vultured by Jalen Hurts anymore. So
Hmm.
that's great. So I like Swift a lot. Running back 20 last year. I think he's got potential to be way higher than that this year. And what are you going to do? Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson are occupying this backfield with him. They did whatever they wanted to do last year. Is okay. Um, yeah, I don't know. Khalil Herbert, he did have some pop games. He was like a top 12 RB for 3 games, and he did mm, serviceable, but he missed a lot of time. And when Rashawn Johnson was in, it didn't really go that well. He was beat out by Deonta Foreman.
Oh.
He did have like this crazy RB8 week 1, and we all got excited about it, and then it kind of petered out, and that was it. But like I said, man, Swift, 3 years, $24 million. That pretty much says the whole story in one sentence. So
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, man. It's about the pass catchers, right? The rest
Yep.
of this is just crazy. I mentioned DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Dunze. Like that's insane. It
Yeah.
has to be the top. I mean, top three as far as wideout rooms in the NFL.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I mean, you're
maybe
projecting a Dunze, obviously, but we
yeah,
love
top 10
him.
rookie.
So yeah, it's
I
great.
mean,
Yeah.
can't yeah, can't be too sad about that as a number three
Yeah.
guy on the list. But yeah, I mentioned it earlier when we're talking about Minnesota last year had three players with 90 plus targets. I kind of went through the whole league and just looked at, how likely it was for these three guys to all have pretty competitive roles and high level contributions. And so, out of all the NFL teams, 22 of them had at least two players with 90 or more targets on their team. Then there was, eight teams that had only one, and then the Pats and the Giants didn't have anybody over
Oof.
90 targets. So forget about all those teams. Okay, so of the 22 teams that had multiple players with 90 plus targets, you had nine teams where it was a tight end and a wide receiver. You had nine teams where it was two wide receivers, and then you had the Jets that had a running back and a wide receiver. So Brees Hall, you were awesome. So that leaves three teams. Minnesota, we mentioned, two wide receivers and a tight end. Cleveland was the same deal. And then one remaining team, the Seattle Seahawks, had three wide receivers, over 90 targets. I mean, I hate to say it, but it feels like the Bears almost know what they're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So that makes me happy. I mean, Keenan Allen obviously 150 on the target number with 108 catches, 1,200 yards, seven touchdowns. Like that's not happening again. But something is going to be amazing in this team. And I think I'm kind of leaning towards DJ Moore. You can't put two top 10 wideouts from different teams on one team when it's high volume like this and expect it to happen again. But I do think that the NFL average for pass completions last year was 370. And if you give Moore 100 of those, you give Allen 80 of them, and you give Odunze 70 of them. That's 250. That leaves 120 for Swift and whoever auxiliary players we want to do. A little Cole Kmet if you want that to happen. And I think it's realistic, and that gives these guys each enough to eat and be startable, pretty healthy fantasy assets. So
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm kind of forecasting from this wide receiver room. Um, but as far as Kmet goes, the tight end, I think it's over for Kmet.
Yeah.
Like it's done. Like Fields loved this dude
Yeah.
in the red zone, and it was insane. Um, he led the team the past 3 years in red zone targets. It's pretty impressive. He had a nice couple of top 10 years the past 2 years, and the premium targets are going away from him. The competition level he has for red zone targets and pretty much any targets is extremely like it's magnitudes higher than it was in the past.
Yeah.
And so it's over. Swift is going to just knock him out as far as that goes. And to add to a little bit of the sadness and the bleak outlook I have for Komet, which hopefully I'm wrong, hopefully he's amazing, but I'm looking at this guy. His name's Lake McRee, and he is the leading USC tight end pass catcher over the
Oh,
past 2 seasons. I don't know if you heard that name.
no.
Nobody has. He did combine the past 2 years for 36 receptions. So
Neat.
I don't know if Caleb Williams, the YOLO passing Heisman Trophy winning phenom, is going to be looking for that safe tight end catches, but my money is on no.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's the Bears right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Bears are super interesting. Like you said, Caleb Williams is such a big factor. I mean, if he is the guy that presumably most people thought he was, as the number one overall, then this offense should cook. I am worried about the offensive line, honestly. Like I just am. I always am. And they had, I think, three, possibly four starters on the offensive line not practicing right now due to injury. So like an offensive line that's already kind of shaky. And then I mean, I know they made some additions, Tevin Jenkins and Darnell Wright. But by the way, those are two of the guys that were out.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that does scare me, especially when we talk about Swift, because he's going to go from one of the best offensive lines in the
Oh,
league to potentially like not maybe one of the worst, but potentially like one of the more mid. So that kind of worries me. But I'm with you on DJ Moore being the guy there. I don't think it's gonna be Keenan Allen. In fact, if we were to do some kind of like, I don't know, bold takes episode, I would say Odunze maybe outscores Keenan Allen this season. Um,
join
that'd
us
be a
next week for the
bolder,
bold take
yeah, it'd be a
episode.
spicy one. But I do think I'm with you. It's DJ Moore, is the guy that's, I mean, he just got paid.
Print
Um,
money. Yeah.
yeah, like he is going to be the target leader here, and he's more explosive than Keenan Allen. Obviously Keenan Allen, as far as wide receiver twos go, is like the best one you could ask for. So that's going to be awesome. But then I just think, pairing Caleb with Rome, they want those two guys together to be the future of the Bears. And if Rome, I loved Rome coming out. So if Rome is the guy that I thought he was, then I think he can be like Keenan Allen, like in that sort of vein and role. And so like I don't think it'd be crazy that if Rome started to heat up, especially with the way wide receivers come in as rookies these days. It would not shock me if you traded for an aging vet who didn't get along with the Gen Z quarterback who has a purse on Hard Knocks and paints his nails. Like it wouldn't be that crazy to me. Not that I don't give a shit about any of that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying like just, oh man, we traded for this guy and it didn't gel. Oh, that's not that crazy to think. And then, oh, as opposed to, oh, we drafted this kid in the same draft class and those two kids gelled more. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but I just wouldn't be that shocked if Rome was better than Keenan Allen this year. But again, I'm with you. DJ Moore is the guy that you want in that offense, in terms of like he has the highest potential for fantasy, in my opinion. And then yeah, just Cole Kmet. It was cool. It was fun, man. You had a good run. It's a
Deuces.
wrap. It's a wrap. um,
Yes, sir.
but there you have it. That's every division. We did it.
What?
All
Eight.
eight
Eight.
divisions. I almost said 16. What an idiot. All eight divisions, 32 teams have been covered. Hopefully we gave your team enough time. But we will
We
get
did.
getting into some newer content starting next week with the divisional wrap up kind of ending today. We don't know what we're getting into, so no spoilers for next week, unfortunately. But
Aw.
until then, we've been Rough Draft Research. You've been the audience, and we'll see you next time.
Stay awesome.
I took a lease out on your heart.